Hi friends, this is Pat Nepley and I'm with the See the Light Art Projects. This is a special bonus lesson called Cartooning Basics for Kids. And if you like this lesson, you're going to really love all of the art projects from See the Light. So check us out on our website at www.seethelightshine.com. Now, what you're going to need for this special lesson, actually just some really basic supplies. You'll need a whole bunch of white paper, a good pencil, kind of good eraser that you like, a bullet point permanent black marker, and a finer black pen. Okay, so what is cartooning? Well, cartooning is a type of illustration or drawing that is not entirely realistic, and it's meant to convey either satire or humor. Well, that's actually our modern definition. The word cartoon comes from the Middle Ages, where Italian artists would make a cartone. And that was when an artist was doing a fresco or perhaps something large like a stained glass window and wanted to take a design that they had drawn on large pieces of paper to transfer onto the wall where the fresco was going to be or the window was going to be. And so what would happen is, out of that large drawing, little tiny holes would be punched throughout the drawing along the lines of the drawing. And a group of men would take that large piece of paper up to where it was going to be transferred onto the wall and take a bag of charcoal dust, you know, like the charcoal that you'd have in your barbecue grill. Very dirty, very dusty. And with that charcoal dust inside this pouch, like a bag, they would tap over the holes and the dust would come through to create like a dotted line. That was called pouncing. So after they would pounce over the entire cartone, then they would take away the paper, and there was the drawing on the wall that now the artist would use as a guide when they were going to do their fresco. So that's a cartone. So then what happened is, in the 18th century in England, somebody was doing a political illustration to kind of mock one of the local politicians in England, and he gave it the name of a cartoon. And then that name stuck. So anytime there was an illustration or a drawing that was meant to convey satire or humor, and it was just a line drawing that was published, so it was in a magazine or newspaper, it became known as a cartoon. Now, you're probably really familiar with cartoons because you probably watch animated cartoons. That means moving cartoons on the television or in videos, and probably the comics or the funny pages in your paper. So the name is kind of stuck. And they're always great fun, and anything can be made into a cartoon. And that's what I want to go over with you today, some basics of how you can make any type of cartoon. So where are we going to get started? Well, when you're going to cartoon, the first step in any kind of drawing is always observation. If you're going to make a cartoon cat, you better know what a real cat looks like before you can do the exaggeration that's involved in cartooning. So you have to start with some basic shapes. Now, if you've done any drawing with me before in our See the Light Art class or See the Light Art projects, you know that shape is one of the key elements of art, and it's the first thing you look at when you're getting ready to draw. Basic shapes. So, let's get started with some basic shapes. So grab a piece of paper, and we're just going to start with some basic shapes of an ordinary object. And let's start with vegetables. I know that sounds kind of strange, but you can make anything into a cartoon. So if I were to do, let's say, a carrot, I know that a carrot is a triangle, but when you go to do cartooning, you're going to exaggerate. So I'm going to make this triangle, carrot shape, kind of a little squatter and fatter. If I have two shapes next to it, I want to make it different than my carrot, so I'm going to go with a green pepper. Well, a green pepper is a little more on the square side. So I'm going to start with a square that's kind of rounded off, like this. And what I know about a green pepper is they're bumpy at the top, and also a little bit narrower and bumpy at the bottom. So now my square has become my green pepper. And on the other side, I'm going to do not quite a circle, but close, and that's going to be a tomato. Nice and round. So I have three very basic shapes. A rounded off triangle for my carrot, a rounded off square for my pepper, and a rounded off, not quite circle and not quite oval for my tomato. Okay, now what makes things a cartoon is when you give them human characteristics. And so that's what we're going to do. So what are the basics of the human characteristics? Is the face, and that's the eyes, nose, and mouth. So our characters are going to get eyes, nose, and mouth. But I'm going to set it aside for a second, because what I want you to do now, friends, is practice with a lot of different kinds of eyes, nose, and mouth. And so we're going to start with the eyes. So on a piece of paper that it's going to be our scrap paper or our work paper, we're going to experiment with different eye shapes. Now, there's the most basic cartoon eye shape, and that's an oval, and right next to it, right up against it, is another oval, and dark dots in the middle. That's the most basic cartoon eyes. And with those, though, you can do a lot, because I can do those same eyes, two ovals right up against one another, and I can bisect it in half to make lids and have the dark circles right under the lids. See that? Or I can put the two ovals right up against each other. I can make a look of surprise by putting the dark dots right in the center, like the eyes are open real big in surprise. Now, you don't have to have the ovals that are right up against each other, but those are the basic cartoon eyes. You can draw a line going across like this and have two eyes suspended underneath, like that. That's a totally different look. You can just have two dark dots without the big eye around it. You can have eyes like this. You can even have glasses with dark dots in between. So the key, my friends, is for you to experiment on a piece of paper making a lot of different eyes. Now, most people's eyes, of course, are separated by a bridge of a nose. And animals' eyes sometimes are even on the other side of the head. But that's not funny. That's too realistic. So always think a little different than what it looks like in reality. Reality is two eyes. Reality's two eyes are the same size and the same shape, but what makes them funny is when they're smashed together like this. Okay, so I'm going to give my vegetables some eyes, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is work on my carrot, and I'm going to give my carrot two ovals. I'm going to keep them close together but not right up each other, right against each other. I'm going to make an eyelid at the halfway mark, and I'm going to have my carrot looking down at my tomato. So the dot will be further down like this. So that's my carrot. But I want to do different kinds of eyes for the pepper and the tomato. So I think the pepper's kind of a sly guy. So I'm just going to draw a line across, and I'm going to dangle two half circles underneath the line, and I'll make the dark center of the eye like that. So they're looking over at their friend the tomato. But the tomato is surprised that the other vegetables are looking at him. So I'm going to make big eyes for him right up against each other, but I'll put the dot alone in the center so his eyes are open big. So now we have to do the nose. Now a nose in cartooning is usually quite simple, and it's, think of the alphabet. The most common nose is the letter C, just like that. And of course it can go in either direction. It can go to the left or to the right. Another letter that you would use would be the letter L, like that, long and across, and again in either direction. Another one is the letter J, like that, kind of a narrow fish hook. So shapes, very simple lines, very simple shapes can be your noses. So I'm going to go back to our vegetables, and I want to give each one a different nose. I like this going this way. I think I'm going to do the, let's see, I think I'm going to do the long L going that way for the pepper. And I think for the tomato, just a small little C. So they all look a little different. Now, same thing with mouths. Take another piece of paper and to experiment with a cartoon mouth. Now, you can do a very simple mouth where you can just simply do a shallow U for a smile. You can do a dash or a line across. Again, to show surprise, you would do a very small O, right? Like a surprise look. But the basic cartoon mouth is like this. A line across, a half circle like a moon shape underneath, then a line about 2/3 down, but the bottom part is shaded in, like this. So it kind of shows an open mouth where you see some teeth. That's your basic cartoon mouth. Now you can be a little sillier. You can do the same kind of shape, but you can have as if someone is grinning, showing all their teeth. And so this is where you would draw a line across to be where the top and bottom teeth meet, and then you would draw a bunch of vertical lines like someone is grinning really large. Now, if you're trying to show different expressions with your mouth, you can experiment with a squiggly line like someone's feeling ill. You would do a squiggly line, okay? So you would experiment with a bunch of different mouth shapes, okay? But you can have it where you have variations on existing shapes, or someone sticking out their tongue, like that. Once you have a few that you like, then you're going to go back and create your characters for your vegetables. So for my carrot, I think he's kind of a cheesy guy, so I'm going to give him the big grin. Like that. I don't know, this pepper kind of looks like he's not quite on board. We're just going to give him just a small dash. But our surprise tomato, we're going to give him just a little O. So you can see all three mouths are different for our characters. Now those are the basic human characteristics of the face: eyes, nose, and mouth. But you can always add more that you like. For example, you can add eyebrows. Eyebrows can be very expressive. You can add ears. You can even add in eyeglasses or a mustache. But as long as you have those basics of the eyes, nose, and mouth, you're good. Now what makes a tomato is that kind of star-shaped patch of green at the top. It almost looks like hair there. And for the carrot, it would be some frilly greens coming out of the top. And for the pepper, maybe a short little stem. And there you have some cartoon vegetables, and they all have their own unique character because their eyes, nose, and mouths are different. So that would be the first thing. You know, you can really make anything into a cartoon. I'll give you an example. Here's a tree. It looks like a regular tree, but simply by adding those human characteristics of eyes, nose, and a mouth, I've made a cartoon. Same thing with this toaster. It's an inanimate object, but eyes, nose, and a mouth. Now you have a cartoon. So that's kind of the whole idea. You can experiment with whatever you want at home. Draw anything that's around you and make it a cartoon. There you go, my cartoon kite.